Welcome to the 2022 Unity Beginners course. This is episode 23, and I will demonstrate adding forces to rigid bodies. Adding a force moves a non-kinematic rigid body. There are multiple methods in the Unity API that allow us to apply forces. The most straightforward one is AddForce. It takes a vector3 parameter called force. That means we have to specify the direction and magnitude of the force. We can use the default directions like vector3.up and vector3.forward, and then multiply the vector with a float value as the magnitude. Note, the direction is in global coordinate. So if you want to, say, add a force to make the player character move forward, you should use transform.forward instead of vector3.forward. There is another method called AddRelativeForce. This function takes a vector3 parameter as well. The difference is we can feed a direction, such as vector3.forward, and the method will convert it to a direction relative to the object, which is the same as transform.forward. If you browse the Unity scripting API, you will find the above methods also take an optional ForceMode parameter. This parameter specifies how the force should be applied. Force and impulse mode considers the mass of the object, while acceleration and velocity change mode do not. Force and acceleration mode apply a continuous force, while impulse and velocity change mode apply an instant force. It is worth mentioning the AddForceAtPosition method. This method takes two vector3 parameters, namely force and position. Since the methods above apply forces directly at the center of mass of the rigid body, they do not result in torque. This method, on the other hand, applies force at an offset position away from the center of mass. This causes both force and torque being applied to the rigid body. This method is useful for advanced physics simulations, such as the lifting force generated by the wings of an aircraft or the wheel friction on the tire. There is another method called AddExplosionForce. As you can tell, it simulates an explosion. This method takes four parameters: explosion force, explosion position, explosion radius, and upwards modifier. Note, the explosion force parameter is a float value here. This method is great for achieving bomb effects. As requested by Antonio Toledo, I will demonstrate spawning and throwing an object. Using what we learned about object spawning in episode 10, this code spawns a ball and adds a rigid body component. The rigid body is set kinematic by default. When we press E, the rigid body is set non-kinematic, and we will use the AddRelativeForce method mentioned in this video to apply a forward force to the ball. The optional ForceMode.impulse parameter tells the system to apply an instant force to the ball, and a new ball shoots out when we press E. That is basically how we work with forces. I will demonstrate applying torque in the next episode. This is episode 23 of the 2022 Unity Beginners course. I am Yeahlowflicker, and I will see you in the next episode. Stay tuned.